Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's your boy G-Max, also known as George Smith, and I am bringing you round 5's action for Raceface's Season 1 of the GT4 Sprint Series. And of course, we're here at Monza for this evening's round, and as you can see by the visuals on the screen, we are here in the wet, which means it's raining. That's generally the way that the track does get wet, and I'm also joined by a very familiar voice by now, the voice of Ryan Gill. Ryan, good to have you back with me and at a very wet day at Monza.
Oh, it's great to be back, George. I can't get enough of the GT4 races. I mean, you know me. I never have anything bad to say about the GT4s, and obviously super excited to be back here. We're at Monza, and as you said, it's wet. I'm in my element. It feels just like Britain, and it's actually raining as we speak outside. So you know what? I'm feeling good for this race. I'm feeling immersed.
I mean, normally when we broadcast and it's raining here, and I reference the British weather, it seems to be some summer's day out on that side of the world, and then my references don't hold water. So I'm glad that this time around it's raining here, it's raining there. It actually happens to be pretty miserable here in South Africa as well. I've had to deal with a couple of raindrops, a bit sporadic rain, to be honest. Nothing too hectic. I mean, we normally get some massive thunderstorms and things like that, but yeah, it's been a bit dreary and drizzly, and it did remind me a little bit of the UK today. So of course we're here at our qualifying session. The guys are out on track doing their out laps, just about to go and start setting their qualifying times today. I'm going to toggle our split screens on board here as I believe, I'm not even sure who's going to be setting the first time here today. Ryan, do you have that info for me on your map view at all?
I believe it is going to be Charles Wilkin, who is crossing line right now, and he's going to set a 2:03.687 in the very brightly green and pink liveried Aston Martin GT4. Corne Strauss will cross the line. He'll be the second person to start, or finish rather, a flying lap around Monza for qualifying, and then Ottens will go into second. He'll jump just ahead of Corne Strauss. A bit of a gap between the times for the first couple of drivers coming over, but of course a lot of these guys, I think, George, probably just going to be getting their feet wet, or the tyres wet more accurately, because this place, I mean, this is a tricky circuit in the dry, even though it is mostly built out of straight lines.
I mean, I think that's a good summary of it, and adding a little bit of rain into things is going to throw a spanner into the works for sure. Morgan McCall will cross the line with a 2:03.6, will put himself into pole position provisionally, and very much provisionally, as Ardeon de Beer goes over the line in his AMG to set a 2:03.270, so 3/10 quicker than McCall. But with only 6 drivers so far setting qualifying times, still plenty of opportunities for them to improve. And of course, Ryan, these GT4s, their flying lap really doesn't come in after the first lap out, does it?
No, definitely not. You know, one of the things that we like to keep making some of these points, the differences between the GT3s and the GT4s, is that the GT4s don't have tyre warmers when they're sat in the pit lane. In fact, you know, they're just not allowed to use them. It's not in the rules. So, of course, when you come out on track in the GT4s, your tyres are going to be stone cold. It doesn't matter how long you've been waiting in the pit lane. And, you know, you've got to go out there, and it takes a good couple of laps to get the tyres fully up to temperature and get the pressures nailed in to what they should be. And, you know, it's just one of those elements that is so different from a GT3. We see people on a GT3 grid, they're waiting and waiting for the perfect moment to set their car down onto the ground, get straight out onto the track and start setting fast lap times. But in the GT4s, you've got to be a bit more careful about all of that in your first couple of laps, and it's not really until about your second, third flying lap that you're looking for a more representative time.
I think that's pretty accurate. We see the likes of Junior McCall setting a decent 2:02.961, so getting into the 2:02s, and then getting into the 2:01s. Jordan Sherritt's gone and done a 2:01.749, so 1.2 seconds quicker than what Junior just set. Charles Wilkin came in with another flyer out on the circuit whilst we were having some chats at 2:02.9 for Wilkin. So really it does go to show that these guys are still out there finding some pace, finding a little bit more of that grip. And of course, as they come into these final 2 rounds, it's all about getting that car to the finish line. And unfortunately, Ryan, we have to mention the fact that our grid is a little bit smaller than what we're used to seeing, and that comes down to the fact that we are having those power outages that we get in South Africa. So that's kind of put quite a few people in a position where they weren't able to join the race themselves. So, you know, it kind of simulates like what would be I guess a technical failure in real life, a catastrophic failure, unable to get to the race or whatever it is. And that's where we find ourselves with a smaller grid. But had to just explain to yourself and of course the viewers why we do see smaller numbers this evening. It's not because drivers are afraid of the rain. You know, if it had been me in the driver's seat, Ryan, I would have banked it for the rain. But you know, these guys are the pro division. They definitely are not scared of a little bit of raindrops.
No, definitely not. And, you know, it's an important point that you make, George. You know, it has to be known why the numbers are a bit low tonight. It's out of our hands, it's out of the drivers' hands as well. You know, it's really unfortunate for them because obviously they'll have been looking forward to a good race tonight. And, you know, unfortunately they're not able to race. And it is a big shame for them. It's a big shame for us. It's a big shame for everyone tuning in to watch, but I've said it before, only takes 2 cars to make a race, and I'm pretty sure we've got plenty of quality in with the drivers that are here tonight to make up for that. And you know, you kind of compared it to a mass technical failure. I kind of think it brings back memories to the Indianapolis race that happened in Formula One. I think it was 2006, I believe, where I think only 6 cars took to the grid because the majority of the grid had issues with the tires. I think it was Bridgestone at the time.
I remember and it was like a bit of a protest type
number
thing.
Of cars.
Yeah, and they couldn't, and the Grand Prix still went on, but literally had a couple of cars in it, and even from there were some retirees, I believe. So you know what, the racing continues, and I think that's the biggest thing out here is that you can't just cancel this race or this round or postpone it or any of those things, because it then messes with all the calendars going forward. And you know, very much like real life racing, the show must go on here, and you know, with 15 cars on the grid, that's most certainly going to give us some racing. Following along with Quade Claessens from ATK, of course, he joined a little bit later into the GT4 season starting, but always gives us a good show on the track, and going to get himself up to within the top 5 in the qualifying so far. Sits himself in 4th place with a 203.258. But you know, still drivers out on track at the moment, still looking to find some times, like of Cody Sherritt at the moment still out there, and this is the brother of Jordan. We see him doing some nice drifts coming out of the Lesmo 1, and just goes to show how slippery this circuit really is. And as soon as you go onto those little asphalt runoffs, it even feels a little bit more slippery, because you know, the cars aren't really, or those areas of the track aren't really designed for drainage, so a lot of standing water will find themselves sitting on it.
Yeah, I mean, these circuits, they set up the drainage where it needs to be, which is on the tarmac. And, you know, obviously, those off parts of the track, not where you need to be, not where you should be as a racing driver. And of course, you know, that is where a lot of the water will start to accumulate. One of the things that you kind of have to keep an eye out, though, in the wet is the curbs. The curbs play such a massive part in racing in general. You know, how much can you ride the curbs? How much can you cut the curbs? Can you use the curbs to bounce off the corner and build up momentum through a corner onto a long straight? And especially around here at Monza, you know, the GT4s even more so. The curbs are so important to keeping your pace up around this lap, especially with those tight chicanes that slow you down so much. And of course, as we know, there's no grip on those curbs, especially in the rain. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see how a few of these guys tackle this tonight over the course of the race. And how many people end up getting caught out by some of these wet curbs.
You know, I'm hoping that the A game comes out from all the drivers today. I think the adapting to the rain conditions, I think the semi-new side to the GT4s. I mean, they haven't been around for as long as the GT3s. Even if you tried your hardest, I don't think you could grind as much experience as you've probably built up in the GT3s into a GT4. And so, you know, there's a little bit of those racing nuances to learn between the classes. And I think it really is going to push them to their limits in the Pro Tier here today to make sure that the racing on track is both done clean and fairly, as well as not compromising themselves or, you know, just losing positions unnecessarily. So it's going to be a big battle. I mean, riding on board with Vincala in his M4, we can just see how loose this track is at the moment. And you know, it reads very much wet at the top, 24 degrees on the track temperature itself, 19 degrees ambient, but you know, it does not do justice just looking at sort of details like that. You can start to see the puddling forming up. You can see all those finite details that really make you know, ACC so much fun during these dynamic conditions. And once you get out of that hot lap mode, we see Van Collin miss the braking point coming down into Ascari, and you know, I don't think it will be the first time we see someone doing that. So it's, you know, as soon as you're following cars, you've got the spray coming up. I mean, the immersion is just next level, and it really is just 900% of focus and concentration to get through and make sure you get to the line.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of spray, I mean, you and I, George, we can we can relate so heavily to what the spray is like. We raced in an ACR race, you know, towards the start of this year. It was at Misano in monsoon conditions, and I don't think I have, you know, I don't think I'm overstepping any boundary by saying you couldn't see the car in front of you at the start of the race. It was just, you know, it was just white.
It gives me PTSD going back to that moment. And yeah, there was you know, like you said, there were plenty of cars on the grid. I think, you know, 30 at least, as Vincala loses it going into the first chicane. And again, that's what I'm a little bit nervous for coming into the start of the race here. I think you know, it's fair to be nervous based on the way that we've seen Monza occur during online races in the past. Of course, you're hoping for the absolute best when going into a broadcast like this, and hoping that the drivers really do put their best foot forward coming down. But one small mistake from anyone in the grid in the starting sequence, and it can be a complete chaos, Ryan.
Yeah, Prima Variante, the first chicane, it's notorious, isn't it? I mean, Monza T1 and public lobbies is just a combination that everyone in sim racing knows, and it's one that everyone in sim racing fears. Obviously, fortunately, we don't have public lobbies as an element here tonight, as Paul gets a bit out of shape going into the first chicane. But yeah, it's still going to be quite a challenge. We have less cars on the grid tonight, which will make it a bit easier. It's so much more difficult when you have about 30-40 cars on the grid to have a clean turn one at any track, never mind the likes of Monza, where you're going into one of the tightest chicanes, you know, in the entire library of ACC corners across all the tracks. So yeah, I'm expecting that these guys, you know, they know what they're doing. It was discussed in the briefing. This is a difficult circuit for the start of the race. Everyone wants to keep it clean, and no one wants to see anyone going flying off into the gravel trap or into the wall on turn one. So I think today, I think we're going to see a lot of people, you know, taking it seriously, taking it careful, and hopefully I won't be proven too wrong by the end of turn one.
Yeah, I'm not gonna even, you know, throw any bad juju out there. I think what you've said there sort of clarifies everything that I'm hoping for coming out. The drivers have been spoken to. They've had their drivers briefing. They've been informed to take it easy and to just be aware of, obviously, you know, the conditions that are at hand. And I think them being out on the circuit during qualifying is also enough for them to see how these cars are going to handle. They've had some time to push the braking distances a little bit, and yes, they're going to be throwing in full fuel loads now, and I hope that you know, from our side, the drivers are going to be adapted to those situations. And these GT4 cars, they don't have those tire warmers on the grid. They don't have the ability to you know, get the tires up to a interim level heat before they take off. So they're looking to get as much warmth out of the formation lap, which really doesn't allow them to, the way that it's set up at the moment. So that whole opening lap is really going to be done on pretty cold tires, pretty cold brakes, and good racing going to come out. I'm excited for this round here, and of course the championship still continues out, Ryan. I mean, at the end of the day, we talk about just one race here, but it goes along to the drivers' standings, and Morgan McCall's going to be looking for a victory to, extend his current lead out. JC Krobler isn't here to challenge him at the moment, so it is going to be, an interesting situation. McCall really just wants those points at the end of the day, and with 2 minutes left of quali, I'm trying to find if we've got anybody out on track trying to better up their times. Of course we do. Wilkin, McCall, Sherritt, Strauss to Blanche and Schutter all still out here looking to try and get themselves that edge, start a little bit closer towards the front of the grid.
Yeah, realistically for Morgan McCall, Shell Wilkin and Jordan Sherritt are probably his only contenders for the championship, and I mean, even saying that, there's already a significant gap between them, should we say. We're looking at about 30 points, looking at the championship standings at the moment. But, anything can happen. We've seen so many times in any form of sport where, a team, a driver can have a lead. It can look to be all wrapped up, but one mistake and it could all fall to pieces. And this is the kind of track, these are the kind of conditions where those mistakes are, well, at their highest chance of happening. Monza, in the wet, it's almost a recipe for disaster, and it's probably the one race that I think the championship leader would be fearing the most, because if he doesn't have a good race, if he gets a DNF here, and say Jordan Sherritt or Charles Wilkin take a win, it's game on again.
Yeah, exactly. If anything goes a little bit amiss, then suddenly those opportunities are opened back up. And because a lot of the grid here has obviously been affected by the likes of load shedding, they also then have those abilities here to just be competing for points. So a lot of the grid who, is in championship positions, within the top 10 at least, will then, lose out on the points available to them here. So coming into the final round next week, hoping that we aren't going to be as affected by load shedding, with our grid, and we can get a good final round coming out. So I think there's a lot to change up, and potentially, I think, you've highlighted it quite a lot with the fact that it's Monza in the wet. It is one of those rounds now that could just change up the way that the championship reads. So 9 seconds read on the official clock of the qualifying session. So we're just going to go and see who's going to be out on track and setting a potential another lap, as Cody Sherritt start on track at the moment is dead on with his previous 203.7 at this point, and will not be able to get another lap in after this. So this will be his final lap out on the circuit. Quade Claessens is going to also be out on the circuit. He's also dead on his current time that he's got, that 203.258. Doesn't show that he is ahead of that time, so potentially just going to be settling in for 5th place as well.
Yeah, so that looks like it's going to be qualifying over, and it will be Jordan Sherritt that lines up on pole position for the start of the race. It's going to be Charles Wilkin alongside him. So the two drivers that we spoke about that could be possible, concerns for the likes of Morgan McCall tonight on the front row, ahead of the championship leader, Morgan McCall. But of course, he's got Junior McCall alongside him on the second row of the grid. So it's going to be interesting going down into turn 1. And, well, George, I have to say, just about under 1 minute and 30 seconds until the start of the race here at a very wet Monza. Is there anything you're expecting tonight?
I mean, the fact that Jordan Sherritt and Charles Wilkin line up against each other on the front row, I think for many sim racing fans here that understand the rivalry between them, will be an interesting battle down to the wire. So keen to see what comes through there. Of course, the brothers McCall lining up alongside each other just behind the likes of Sherritt and Wilkin, Morgan in the 3rd and Junior in 4th. That's a little ATK 3-way sandwich, actually, because Quade Claessens is also part of ATK. So a good showing for them to get themselves towards the front of that order. Down the order a little bit, keen to see what the likes of Cody Sherritt can do in the wet. Ryan Ottens from Kai Racing, he always brings a little bit of a spectacle to the racetrack as well. Richard van Kalle down at the bottom of the grid in 15th place. I think he's going to be looking to capitalize off of any errors that get made by drivers in front of him. And I think if he can keep it between the lines, I don't believe he will finish up in 15th place here this evening. So I think you asked me for one little fact, Hill. I gave you a little bit more. Are there any particular drivers that you're interested in this evening, or any sort of battles that you would like to see?
Oh, well, I have to say, I mean, you know, I've done a few races now on, you know, some South African series. I mean, I did a few GT3 races with you a few months ago, and of course I've had the pleasure of covering some of the GT4 championship with you. I mean, drivers that, you know, that strike out to me, drivers that I know from other series. I've seen Quade Claessens in a couple of other series. I think I've seen him around ACR, and maybe I've seen him in an RCI race at some point. Not entirely sure which championship that would have been in. So he's definitely a name I'm familiar with. He's one that I've seen about, and he's not done too bad, you know, in the races I've seen him in. So, you know, he's definitely going to be one that I'm keeping an eye on tonight. But I think my biggest focus tonight is probably going to be what happens with Morgan McCall. Is he going to go all out, risk it, try and get a win, or is he just going to settle in for whatever he can get, pick up some points, play the safe game? We all know that the logical thing to do is play the safe game. Try telling a racing driver that they should play it safe and not try and fight for a win.
It doesn't go down well as a easy to swallow pull. Drivers will always want to finish as far towards the front as they can, and even if it means settling down early on, it's not always a vision that gets shared out. So I think it takes a lot of time and effort for drivers to sort of develop that ideology and maturity to understand that, you know, whilst leading it out here, you don't necessarily need to put all the risks in. And I know that the likes of Morgan and Junior's dad, Robert McCall, big sim enthusiast and someone that supports the scene a lot, he will be, you know, always that voice in their heads, making sure that they try and keep it easy, and you know, he's always guiding them on what to do. So, you know, they're a little bit lucky, I guess, in some regards, got their own crew chief to lead them along. And as we follow along with our drivers down the back straight before Ascari, you know, it's just a couple of minutes or a couple of seconds, more like a minute, until we get to that 2x2 formation. So everybody just out on track. You can kind of see why I alluded to the fact that you don't get the real warmth into the tires as you would like to get on the warm-up lap set in by the sim, but we kind of understand why it's there, and you know, it makes sure that the start sequence is entirely fair.
Yeah, it does. And before obviously they get started and line up 2x2, an important thing to mention on, you said about the crew chief, obviously, you know, feature. I mean, McCall and the McCall brothers, you know, having that voice, and you underestimate how useful that voice is until you have someone in your head, until you have someone telling you what the situation is, how you need to be, you know, how you should proceed. You undervalue how important it is and how much it means to you. And the first time you figure that out in an endurance race, you want it for every race, and it's definitely an advantage they're going to carry into the race here tonight.
Absolutely. So down through the parabolica, they will go now 2x2 wide as Sherritt leads off against Wilkin, and Wilkin will be our car starting on the outside coming down into T1. Sherritt will be on the inside, and I'm just excited really to see what happens here in the wet. Headlights are on, the drivers are already all in formation, and we're just awaiting that green light to drop. And of course, at any moment it will go, and now it goes green for us, and racing is live for round 5 of the Raceface GT4 Season 1 Sprint Cup. And a great start coming out by Sherritt. Wilkin is going to be forced behind to fight up against the likes of the McCall brothers. So Sherritt will get away cleanly into the first chicane. The rest of the grid behind going to start to tuck themselves in. I'm going to try and follow along with the back of the pack and the mid of the pack as we go through, and it looked completely clean coming out. So a good start coming through. Likes of Ryan Otten's getting himself through nice and cleanly, and it will be, I believe, Junior McCall to get himself up into second place, or sorry, into third place there. Charles Wilkin will secure second down into, has he secured second, or is it the likes of, no, it is second. So Junior will then slot himself into fourth place. Morgan will go into third. Jordan Sherritt will lead us away. Quade Claessens with a good start coming out in fifth place. Adrian De Beer into sixth. And at the moment, Ryan, looks like some good train racing in the wets, and just everybody making sure they get themselves through this opening lap cleanly before they start taking the battles to one another.
I did not curse the field. I will congratulate myself on that one, and they all kept it nice and clean into turn one. Very nice to see. And of course, now the real action begins. Wilkin having to defend from Morgan McCall, though, going into the first chicane. That was quite important for Charles Wilkin. If he was going to have any chance, realistically, of taking a win, he couldn't really afford to be overtaken coming into the first chicane. But Morgan McCall, he's still there within half a second, and he's going to make sure that he makes this as difficult as possible for Charles Wilkin as they come into the Parabolica at full speed for the first time. Jordan Sherritt looking comfortable at the moment as they come towards the end of the first lap, and he leads the way from pole.
A good race coming down, and Junior McCall going to be having to fight up against Quade Claessens in a couple of laps time if Quade gets that gap down. Behind them, the likes of Cody Sherritt, he's managed to get himself up to sixth place here, so he seems to have had a decent start. And under pressure is Ryan Ottens here from the likes of Adrian De Beer. Kaike Racing in that AMG going to defend off against Adrian De Beer's red AMG as they come down into T1. Not quite in the place to make a move at the moment, but down the field a little bit. Sean Schutter seems to be getting himself a little bit of action here against the likes of De Blanche. They are going to get themselves into a side-by-side situation down through T2, making their way down towards De La Roggia chicane as Schutter now will hold off the likes of that Aston Martin for the moment. So battles across the board, nothing quite side by side at the moment, but up the front of the field it is still Wilkin and McCall that seem to be the action to follow at the moment.
Yeah, McCall all over the back of Charles Wilkin. He's not giving up. He's going to stick with the Aston Martin for as long as he can. We saw the Mercedes run very well at Monza, didn't we, George, in the RCI GT4 Championship? And that was in the dry. Of course, now they're here in the wet, but the Mercedes car's still doing incredibly well in these wet conditions. The Aston Martin seems to be a bit of a mixed bag in wet conditions from the GT4, and Charles Wilkins made a bit of a mistake coming out of Ascari. That's going to allow Morgan McCall to close up. He's going to go to the outside line as they'll make their way down towards the Parabolica. McCall's AMG just has so much more pace in a straight line, but Wilkin will be better onto the brakes into the Parabolica. McCall's going to cut back onto the inside. Is he going to have the room to put it up the inside? He is going to have the room. Wilkin's not going to cut him off. And they're going to go side by side down the main straight again. And now Morgan McCall, he has the inside line for the first chicane. Prima Variante, how late is he going to be on the brakes? He's just edging ahead of the Aston Martin. The Mercedes quicker in a straight line, even in the wet. But the Aston Martin, ooh, very good on the brakes, both of them. But it's going to be Morgan McCall into second place. And very nicely done there from the Mercedes as Charles Wilkin is already up the back of the Mercedes.
He is indeed. He's not giving any space back. He wants this position back, and he does not want to leave it easily available to McCall at this point. And Wilkin now, we see how that Mercedes does get those good runs down as soon as you get to being able to wind it up. And then back onto Yankers, it's all about the braking points again for Morgan. He knows that his car is going to be faster in a straight line, and as it seems, decently so in the wet too. So if he can keep those braking points as late as possible, keep Wilkin from being able to close down and sit in what is available as a tiny little slip in these GT4s, he'll be able to start to run up and hopefully try and catch the likes of Sherritt at this point. But Sherritt having gapped these two at this point, the little scrap between them costing a bit of time. 4.5 seconds up the road after the last timing split is Sherritt from the likes of McCall. And it looks like right now Wilkins struggling to keep on to the back of Morgan now after the move has been done.
Every millisecond that you spend off the racing line or defending a position costs you time. All the time that you are not taking the ideal line, the ideal braking zone, you know, getting the ideal exit, it's going to cost you time to the guy in front or to the guys behind. And it's one of those things that, you know, you've just got to deal with, and you've got to get the move done as quick as possible. McCall did that, got it done nice and cleanly, and of course now he's going to try and gap Wilkin, try and close down that gap to Sherritt. The gap at the moment is going to be 5 seconds as they cross the line, for 4.9 to be precise, but Wilkin's still within 0.6 of a second. And Junior McCall 1.1 back. Of course, he's got Quade Clarson's for company at the moment. And he's also in one of the Aston Martins. The Aston Martin is showing well here. And of course, Jordan Sherritt's brother, he's going to be running in the Aston Martin as well. So Aston Martin and Mercedes running up towards the front of the grid. The first of the BMWs in 9th, and then 11th, and of course Grayling at the back in 15th. Okay, so I've just had a quick message come through for George Smith. It's on the back end at the moment. We're going to have a quick restart on stream to fix some quality issues going on. So we will be back in a brief moment, and we'll get right back to the action as soon as possible.
Welcome back, everybody. Hopefully I have managed to improve some of the stream quality. I'm not sure if the stream quality has now improved, but we are maxing out bitrate wise what we can do, and if there are any issues, it is now out of my control, and I'm not quite sure what is going on with the pairing, if there is any further issues. So we're back with the race live after a stream restart, and still follow along with the likes of Junior McCall as he tries to chase down the antagonist in what was the race start here, which was Charles Wilkin. Didn't manage to take it to the battle that we wanted to. Ooh, who's gone deep there? Was that Morgan that went deep through?
That was Junior McCall.
Junior, it was Junior. So he's going to rejoin later, and I think it's going to allow Clarsons to get through, and it will let Clarsons get through here. So Junior having to make use of the escape road. I guess that's what it's made for, right? And he will lose the position to Clarsons in the process. And a good start there from Cody Sherritt as well. So, I mean, he's in 6th place, and we can see him in the shots as well coming down. So, a good train of cars for the likes of Cody Sherritt to potentially pass through as well.
Yeah, Quade Clarsons. He'll be saying thank you very much for that. Free position. Didn't really have to work too hard for that one. And yeah, Junior McCall just getting a bit late on the brakes. So easy to do, especially on a wet track. You're going to be so much more precise with your braking, but he's got to move on from that now, and I'm sure he'll be getting told he's got to get his head down, focus, take that position back. But yeah, it is a good start to the race so far for the top 6. They've all kept it very clean between each other when overtakes have happened. And we're looking at Van Coller at the moment. He's in 9th place in the BMW. He's under pressure from Deploy in the 33 Mercedes. Going to come down to Ascari. Nothing doing just yet between the BMW and the Mercedes, but I have to say, this BMW car that has been quite a disappointment, to be honest, in the GT4 field, you know, over a lot of the races. This is one of the tracks in which the BMW did very well in the GT4 races I've seen, but it seems to be struggling here in these wet conditions. Just can't quite get the power down like it can in the dry.
I mean, I'm glad you kind of went there with that. I was going to say, you know, the BMW, out of all the tracks that we've seen it at, the only one that we really saw it stand out to I saw just how powerful it seemed at round 1. And that was, of course, pretty early on in the RCI GT4 series, where the GT4 cars had just come out, and there's been some changes potentially since then. And we haven't really seen BMWs doing too much, but just a reminder here, Richard van Koller was that driver that started in 15th place at the back of the grid at the start of this race. So up to 9th place at the moment, trying to hold on to 9th from Mornay Deploy, attacking him in 10th place in that AMG behind. And at the moment, it's giving Richard a tough time out on circuit, and most certainly make him work for everything as we follow from that rear-facing camera and get a good vision of just how close the likes of Deploy gets himself into the braking zones. And you know, it's not easy to follow cars closely, and it's not easy to follow them in the wet. So both drivers doing a good job at this point. And a little bit down the field, we also see the likes of Sean Schutter and Blanche starting to get themselves into a little bit of a battling position. That's down for 11th and 12th. Everybody here gifted the position of a top 15 thanks to the likes of load shedding and not being able to join the server. So Schutter going to run wide, make a little mistake on the exit of Lesimo 2. That's going to allow Blanche to get himself aside and past, really. And Schutter then going to have to tuck in behind, coming down into Ascari. So change of position down the order. Towards the front, though, nothing really giving up too much. It does look like Claessens is closing in on Wilkin and potentially going to get himself up there. And ATK looking to find themselves multiple podium positions here for sure. I mean, they've got McCall, they've got Wilkin. They've got McCall, they've got Claessens, and they've got Junior McCall as well down in 5th place, potentially to get themselves up here in the spot that Charles Wilkin holds down. So they'll most certainly want to get themselves a 2-3 or a 1-2-3, potentially if Jordan makes a big mistake as well. But 10.2 seconds now between Jordan Sherritt and Morgan McCall.
Yeah, Jordan Sherritt, he's absolutely flying. You'd think he's setting lap times in the dry, wouldn't you? The kind of pace that he's setting at the moment, but no, most definitely very, very impressive drive from Jordan Sherritt. We've seen it so often, haven't we, that he is such an impressive driver, and when he's in that consistent, you know, form, just setting those lap times, lap after lap after lap, you know, go into hot lap mode. You know, it's kind of similar to what they say with some of the, you know, Formula One drivers of days gone by, and even some of the current drivers, that they have that consistency level to just go hot lap mode once they get a gap and make it so consistent. The likes of Lewis Hamilton and Sebastian Vettel, two very notable drivers that have been very good at that over their career, and Jordan Sherritt in the sim racing scene seems to be very, very good at that as well. But we're looking at Charles Wilkin. He's currently being chased down by Quade Claessens, and Quade Claessens is doing a very good job, isn't he? Took the position off Junior McCall through a mistake, and of course now he's just aiming to keep with the likes of Charles Wilkin, see if he can pressure him into a mistake. And of course, after having seen the mistake that Junior McCall made when Quade Claessens was chasing him down, I think he'll be fairly confident that he can do that to Charles Wilkin as well, but I'm sure Charles Wilkin will not make it easy for him.
You know, Ryan, Charles Wilkin, a driver that I've sort of built up a lot of respect for along the entire duration of my sim racing career. There's been, you know, lots of drivers that I should say I've had some good relationships with, and kind of got a good vibe going with everybody. And you know, the drivers that we get to see come in, week out, really do put in the time and effort to give us good racing here. And Quade Claessens here from ATK, he is just putting on the pressure that he needs to do here in the wet. And Charles Wilkin will be feeling it for sure. He'll be seeing that you know, Quade's lap times are literally maybe a 10th slower or a 10th quicker when it comes into the relative times. I think Quade's struggling a little bit in following behind in some of that spray that's coming out from Wilkin's car, but just look at how close he gets down into the braking zones of the second chicane. And I think that this third place spot that Wilkin holds now is not going to be an easy hold for the next 29 minutes of racing.
You saw it there, didn't you, coming out of the second chicane? You know, Wilken, he pulled over to the side of it, a bit defensive. So he was obviously, you know, he's obviously got it in his mind. Quake Larson's is in his head. And it's one of those things that this is the point where you kind of wish you did have a race engineer, isn't it? You know, just telling you to keep focused, keep calm, ignore the guy behind. It's not an issue. But of course, it's so, you know, easy to fall into that trap. You see the headlights behind. You can't help but look at the mirrors. And, you know, it's just one of those things you start and you can't stop. And it sounds a bit ridiculous, you know, people are, oh, just don't look. And until you've been in that position, it's so easy. And you can see him here as well. He's pulling out and he's sticking to a bit of a defensive line. It's not entirely, you know, oh, I'm concerned he's going to dive bomb me into the Parabolica. But it's for Quake Larson's at least, it's an acknowledgement that he knows he's there and he knows he's got to keep him covered off. Quake Larson's very different line through the Parabolica compared to Charles Wilken, but that will allow him to launch off of the corner much better than the Aston Martin of Charles Wilken, and you can already see Quake Larson's trying to tuck in behind. Of course, he's got to worry about Junior McCall behind him as well, though, George.
He does, and you know, if Junior keeps up his pace, Junior's finding 3/10 on that last lap to both of Claessen's and Wilken. So if Junior can continue with that sort of pressure, then he'll be right into this battle as well. And then Wilken is going to have to deal with two 80k drivers putting pressure onto him, and potentially find himself losing out extra positions in all this. And I think that Claessen's isn't too worried about Junior getting onto his backside. I think his head is very much focused on getting past Wilken, knowing that his teammates getting closer is not too much of an issue for him. And I think in the long run, I think that Wilken here will be the one looking at those timing splits and noticing that, oh, you know, Fitz catching up, and if they continue like they are, and they have to then start getting defensive. We see Cody Sherritt in his black Aston Martin in the background coming through Lesmo 2. He's also potentially in it to win it. And then a fair way down the field would be the likes of Ottens and De Beer, but you know, these two have kind of still given themselves that their own mid-pack battle, right? So the more that these two fights out, the lesser chances they've got in catching up to potentially the likes of Claessen's and McCall. And now Ryan Ottens doing a good job holding off the likes of De Beer, and with no mandatory pit stop or anything here, obviously it's just a straight out sprint race. You're just going to be trying to push and hold for that entire duration, right until the checkered flag.
Oh, just look down the bit of the field. There's been a bit of contact between Schutter and Corne Strauss, and that has allowed the BMW of Grayling and the Porsche of Peens to go through. And you can see here on the replay, Corne Strauss, he's on the outside line coming towards Ascari. And of course, this isn't really where you want to be. You don't want to be on the outside line, especially not in the wet. He'll come in, trees will obscure it a bit, but they will give us sight just to see what happened there. A bit of touch on the back, the BMW and the front of the Mercedes. Nothing too serious, nothing too big. Maybe just a bit of a misjudged braking point there from the likes of Schutter. Nothing too serious, but Corne Strauss will be in front of the 113 BMW either way.
Yeah, and they in that process are going to have let Grayling and Peens through. So Schutter now going to have to fight his way back up from the back of the grid. Of course, we have had one of the drivers dropping out in the situation. I believe it was to Blanche in his Aston Martin that has had an issue dropping out of the server potentially. Also, again, power-related issues. We know that that's an issue at the moment. So it looks like the likes of Wilken is going to still now feel that pressure from Claessen's, and Claessen's is getting closer and closer to being in the right place at the right time to make a move. I mean, there's not plenty of overtaking opportunities at Monza. I mean, it's generally a place where, you know, it's all about that run and that exit, and if someone makes a slight mistake coming through down one of these straightaway sections, you generally got a better exits and can get alongside and move through. So I think that you know, Wilken's going to stay defensive as much as he can. He's going to try and force Claessen's to make that mistake, force him to try and have a little look around the outside, cost himself some time, and then you know, kind of make that run away, give himself a little bit of padding to the next potential mistake. But maybe Claessen's here on the inside having a potential overtake opportunity. He's gonna maybe be able to get himself alongside down at the start-finish straight. We see Junior McCall entering in as well. I don't think Claessen's is quite there. He's going to get right onto the back quarter panel of the likes of Wilkin as they come down into T1 now for the start of their 10th lap. And it's very close and tight racing, isn't it? Claessen's doing a great job to just stay in that proximity space to Wilkin, and they will stay that way coming out through the exit. Once again, Claessen's going to have a little look to the outside through turn 2, not quite where you can make a move coming through, but will then dive back. You can see just how defensive, like you mentioned, Ryan, Claessen's has to, Wilkin has to go. Going to hold the inside line, try and force the likes of Claessen to get his way through, but just incredible racing coming out at the moment.
Yeah, it's looking very, very good. Craig Claessen's obviously playing it safe, of course. He didn't go for a dive bomb into the first chicane. He knows he doesn't need to. Just needs to keep putting the pressure on the likes of Charles Wilkin. He's really in his head now, and you can tell as Charles Wilkin makes a bit of a mistake coming out of the second Lesmo. This is it. This is Quaid Claessen's opportunity. Is he going to have a chance coming down into Ascari? If he's going to do so, he's going to be on the outside line. And here they come, down towards Ascari. It's going to be Wilkin on the inside. Claessen's on the outside. He thinks better of it. He'll try for a switchback. But the space isn't quite going to be there. And as they come to the exit of Ascari now, Wilkin seems to have held onto the position for the moment. But look at Junior McCall. He's in the mirrors now of Quaid Claessen. He's caught up right to these guys. And of course, we know the Mercedes is quicker in a straight line than the Aston Martin. And Junior McCall's going to have a look on the outside line into the Parabolica. Slight touch there. And Charles Wilkin is on the curb. He's lost time. He's going to go wide. And that's going to mean that both Quaid Claessen's and Junior McCall go through. And I think actually for Charles Wilkin, he's pulled over on the side of the Parabolica, George.
Yeah, I'm not even sure. Something's happened to Charles Wilkin. Yeah, he's bleeding out positions. And I'm not quite sure. It looks like potentially maybe something with like hardware failure or something for Charles here, but was certainly not what he wanted to happen, and that's going to promote McCall and Claessen's through to the positions that they now hold down, 3rd and 4th place. And Quaid Claessen's then going to be finding himself onto that potential podium position here if he can hold it out for the next 21 minutes. But we've seen Junior giving him a little bit of pressure as he followed on behind the likes of Wilkin for the last couple of laps. And we might now see just how strong that Mercedes can be here in the wet at Monza. It seems to be holding on to its beastly qualities from the dry side when we saw it here. And it looks like here, Quaid Claessen's going to be having to do and dig deep to hold off the likes of the youngster behind him. And Cody Sherritt, he continues to close down that gap as well. So, you know, just kind of watch out for that man sitting in 5th place, doing some drifts out of Lesmo 2 in the background. You know, times like that are not going to get him closer, but few and far between. Cody Sherritt will potentially be able to jump up here. 20 minutes of racing, so still plenty of time to do so.
Yeah, definitely so. And I've just been looking through the replay here, George. I thought that a bit of investigation was probably necessary to see, is there anything we can tell from an onboard of Charles Wilkin? And I think, well, the issue from at least what I can see is the car won't accelerate. His throttle dies halfway through Parabolica, and, you know, the car just won't accelerate. He's shifting up through the gears, but the car just will not go, and it grinds to a halt at the pit entry. So yeah, could be something throttle related there for Charles Wilkin. Maybe with equipment, you know, maybe not. We don't entirely know, but
I mean, yeah, as far as I know, you can't blow a motor in ACC at this time. I have heard that a console player had an issue with the engine getting blown. So I mean, as far as I know, the engine failure side is not a part of the way.
I've had a failed gearbox before.
You have?
I have. Funny enough, it was at Monza. It was at the start of a race. I had a failed gearbox occur on the start, I was in first gear for the start of the race for lining up 2x2. Soon as the green lights go out, I accelerate, and then it wouldn't shift up through the gears. Wouldn't shift up, wouldn't shift down. Went into the menu, checked my inputs, remapped them. Car still wouldn't go.
I mean,
so there are some elements of failure.
I mean, it would be utterly wild if that was the case of what happened there. We see Darren Pierce here being pressured out by the likes of Corne Strauss. Strauss trying to make his way back up through the order after that incident with Schutter. Can have a look here, potentially coming down into De La Roger. It's very hot for Strauss. He's just going to cut right through and potentially just give that position back. He's skipped it through, and he is going to give that position back and will allow Grayling through as well. So Strauss making a mistake, but realizing so, and in having gained the advantage, giving those positions back. So Piens and Grayling will be able to now fight it out down towards the back of the pack here, and up towards the front of the pack at the moment. Let's have a little run through of things. Jordan Sherritt leads things away quite comfortably at this point in time over the likes of Morgan McCall. I don't know, 17.5 seconds is the latest update, is Jordan Sherritt over Morgan McCall in second place for ATK Academy. And then Quade Claessens is down in third place with Junior McCall just behind him in fourth. And then down the field, a couple of car links would be Cody Sherritt in fifth place, Ryan Ottens in sixth for Kai K. He's shaken off the likes of De Beer for what looks like a little bit of breathing space. De Beer in seventh place right now, but would like to get past the likes of Ottens. We saw him sitting on the back of him for a good portion of the race. Van Coller up into eighth place, so starting at the back of the grid, making his way through the field quite nicely, and potentially looking to find a couple more positions if he can, with 17 minutes of racing to go. Mornay Deploy in ninth place, Darren Piens in 10th, which rounds out our top 10, but doesn't really do us much justice with the smaller grid thanks to the load shedding. And Grayling is right in this potentially to throw a little bit of a spanner into the works for the top 10. He is in 11th place, just behind for Retro Sim. And then of course Corne Strauss, after dodging the chicane on the previous lap, is just behind them but closing down the gap, proving that he's got the times potentially there based on the times that he's done. He's almost a second faster than, he's a 10th faster than the likes of Darren Piens in the last two laps. So, if Strauss can continue this, he's going to catch up to Grayling, get himself up the order. And then Sean Schutter down in 13th place, not having the greatest of races, seeming to have some of those contacts and forcing himself off track, meaning that he's a little bit down the running order. And unfortunately, in the smaller grid sizes, it's a lot easier to see cars that are out of position based on where they are. So Sean Schutter not having the greatest races, but it's all about picking it up and seeing it through to the end. You're still getting good points finishing up in where you're going to finish here, just having shown up to the race by the virtue of the way that things ran out today.
Yeah, I mean, he's Sean Schutter's sitting 30th in the championship at the moment. He's only got 3 points so far this season. So of course, this is going to be a very, very good haul of points for him. If he can, get to the end of this race, 13th place. I mean, even if it was 15th, it still wouldn't be bad for him. And he's going to pick up some decent points tonight. Just needs to get to the end of the race, and it'll help his championship significantly towards the end of the season, George.
It's all about scooping up those points, and if you get a freebie round where half the grid can't race because of technical failures, then you are going to scoop them up quite gleefully and unashamedly in those situations. So I think all the drivers here today happy to do just that. And Quade Claessens here with a very good race, of course. And I think that Junior McCall struggling a little bit to keep that same pressure on without having Wilkin in front of Claessens to kind of bottle him up and put him into those difficult positions, force him to try and go wide, force him to try and go alongside, costing time the entire time. So Junior just sitting down comfortably in fourth place. He's going to be trying to nip away at the couple of tenths that he can to catch up to their teammate car here for ATK. but a good showing from ATK, like I've mentioned. So very nice to see how they're doing, and continuing to support in the Raceface leagues. Jordan Sherrod, of course, is the Raceface.Pro coach alongside Bruno Cadili for the Raceface Speed Labs sessions that they run. So if you guys are looking to get some good coaching, this is the perfect time for me to plug it. If you want to lead Monza wet races by 17.5 seconds, then you need to get some Speed Labs driver coaching, and you can do that all via the Raceface website. The bookings are there. If you get into the Discord, you'll see announcements of when group sessions are made. There's some discounts that go down for that, and there's also some open sessions that get offered out from time to time. So if you just book a slot there in an open session, you get to experience it and not have to pick up any of the tab involved in doing so. But yeah, everything's well priced, and it's good to go and check these things out. And would just like to also thank the stream sponsors, Resource Complete and Black Ribbon Simulations. Without them, all the constant support things wouldn't always be possible. So I'd just like to let the stream know during this time as well that I am in the process of getting a new microphone preamp. So my old microphone has been out of commission for the last 2 or 3 weeks as I've been waiting for that. So I've been on a temporary solution. So if things have not sounded the same as how they used to sound, and things haven't been quite the same, I do just apologize on that. So hopefully that arrives by the end of this week, and we can be back up and running for the final rounds with the proper microphone setup and all that. So that's the housekeeping done and dusted. If you guys do want to follow for Twitter updates, you can follow Raceface.Pro on Twitter as well. I do believe that they've got a Facebook page too, so pretty much on the social medias, go and follow Raceface, get the updates there. And if you do want to get involved in the racing action, of course, just sign up on the website. It's as easy as that, Ryan.
Yeah, I mean, we live in an age where it is easier than ever before to get into league racing and competitive racing, don't we? I mean, it's such a joy in these days. I remember the days where you had to go through forums, you had to make a forum thread, put all your information in, and it's a hassle downloading livery packs and everything, installing stuff individually. It was complete nonsense. And Jesse Lee, one of our commentators at RCI, he even remembers the days when league racing was first invented and all that sort of stuff back for sim racing. So he remembers what it was like back when it was a real pain, but now it's so easy. So of course, if anyone is interested in getting involved,
De Beer just made a big slidey mistake and almost binned it into the pit lane himself. So this is going to open up opportunities then for Van Coller, who's a little bit down the order, but now with a slightly damaged AMG, De Beer going to be in a bit of trouble here for holding on to the 7th place.
That's a bit more than slightly damaged, George. There's damage on every angle of that car, no matter which way you look at it. You can see the bonnet sticking up. You can see scratches and bruises on that car, especially on the front.
It's active aero, Ryan. It's active aero.
I mean, aero is not as significant on these cars as it is with the GT3 cars. That is something that's, made quite obvious with these. You can get damage on the GT4s, which doesn't impact the car as much as it would a GT3. However, that's not to say that these things are built like tanks and you can throw them into the wall however you like. They will still be affected by damage. And I have to feel for De Beer there, because I think that car is not entirely going to be comfortable to drive for the remaining 10.5 minutes of this race.
I don't think so either. I think that he is at risk there of losing that position to Van Coller in that BMW behind, and I don't think that 10 minutes is enough time for him to be able to hold him off. So at this point, I agree with you. He was doing some good driving, putting pressure onto Ryan Ottens from KK Racing, and De Beer then making that mistake coming out, that's going to sort of nullify all of the hard work that went into getting down onto the back of Ottens, and perhaps he'll adjust. There is that to sort of remember. You might make a big damage mistake and then the car hates you, and within the next couple of laps you start to adjust to it. You can't repair it, you can't put the time back in that you're losing on track, but you can maybe wrestle it around and still keep it in for a top 10 finish with 9 minutes to go. So, you know, maybe De Beers kind of balancing that up. Do you go in, throw it into the pits, you know, lose all the time in the pit stop, or do you now, with 9 minutes to go, see if you can just keep it out on the track and hold off as many positions as possible? It's hard to overtake at Monza, so if you just make sure that you put your car into the inside, provided you don't lose it down along a straight, which is more than likely against the BMW, right? But if you can hold him off, potentially holds on to 7th, but that BMW is looming. Can you hear the Jaws music playing?
Definitely can. Although the Jaws music I can hear right now is actually coming from a Porsche Cayman, George, because Grayling and Peens is very, very close at the moment, as Peens just taps the back end of the BMW of Grayling as they're coming out of the first chicane. We get a little bit of a replay here. Very different lines here, and you can see just catches the anti-cut curb and, of course, taps the back of the BMW. Nothing doing there, though. Not intentional, and obviously that won't be looked into post-race at all. Just a little bit of a snag on the back end, and it hasn't really benefited Peens at all. But the Porsche is looking pretty good in these conditions, and I spoke to James Parker not too long ago, who drives for the Coach Dave Academy team, of course David Perel's team, and he said to me that, you know, the Porsche Cayman, he said it's not the greatest car in the GT4s, but he said in the wet it comes alive, and he said it's very, very comfortable in the wet to drive. And well, Peens, he's competing for a top 10 position at the moment. Of course, the grid is fairly reduced tonight, and I'm sure he's not the only Porsche that we would have had on the grid tonight. But if he can get his Porsche into the top 10, I don't think that'll be too bad of a job from him today.
No, I think that's very much on the cards and potentially there. I heard similar things being said about the Cayman in the GT4 packs, and I believe that the potential out of the car is also there if you get it right for it to be a beast in the dry too. So the Cayman, maybe you know, something that I haven't given enough time to and dedication. I've been a little bit not much of a GT4 Porsche fanboy in the pack. You know, I haven't given the Cayman my full-on G-Max committed Porsche love that I give to the GT3 side, and perhaps I've been sleeping on it, Ryan, and you know, it just needed a little bit of the wet to come through, and Bian's here being the only one driving in one, not quite at the front of the order, but you know, I'll claim it as a top 10 finish regardless. I mean, the grid's a little bit smaller, but potentially going to try and have a look late on the brakes onto the inside as they come down into the first chicane. Going to keep it side by side with Grayling on the exits. And Cornet Strauss is going to benefit from this as well if these two have to fight it out. I think that Pience has got it done for the moment, but they still stay side by side. That's going to allow the BMW to have the inside line down into De La Roggia, and it will force Pience in that Cayman to give him space down. But looks like the legs are there for the Cayman. He's got himself ahead. Does he give the space through? Is Grayling still trying to have a look through? But nice and clean coming through. Cornet Strauss getting into the action now as we see the blue AMG getting a little bit excited through. And I think that Grayling sent it down into Lesmo 1. Very wide from Pience. He allowed Cornet Strauss here to potentially get through as well. He hasn't. Strauss still hanging on now into Lesmo 2. Can Pience defend against Strauss and get his position back against Grayling? Beautiful bit of driving coming out of Grayling after the exit of the second chicane, and a good job coming down into Lesmo 1 to just ensure that he had that inside line, didn't understeer out wide and force Pience to go wide, and that's now given him that space because you know, Pience doesn't want to lose out to Strauss, so he's going to go in the defensive way if he can against that AMG, Ryan.
Yeah, very, very good driving from all of these guys. Of course, Pience got the move done, but then, you know, the BMW, the pace that it seems to have here around Monza, it's a bit handicapped in the wet, it seems, but it still has incredible traction out of the corner. Cornet Strauss, very late on the brakes at Parabolica, and he'll go wide, and I think that's going to be his attempt at taking a top 10 position, maybe down the drain with 5 minutes left to go.
Oh, he got kicked out by that inner curb coming into Parabolica. It hooked the wheel, it sent him, he then had to counter steer to correct it. And like you said, potential top 10 maybe now not on the cards for Strauss. He's going to have to settle down a little bit away from the action that continued in front of him between Piens and Grayling.
He's gone off at the first chicane as well now, as you saw in the background there. So Cornet Strauss struggling with the brakes a bit now towards the end of the race, it seems. It's so easy though, isn't it, George? When you get frustrated, things start going wrong. You make one mistake, you can make 2 mistakes, and 3 becomes 4 and 5, and you know, it's so easy to let mistakes pile up so quickly when you get frustrated. And
sim racing is so rhythm based. You know, I think people don't understand just how much of that flow is so monumental in having a good lap thereout. And you know, one tiny mistake coming in, you know, one you know, tire going off, going out, and losing the valuable track, the valuable temperature that you've built up, and you know, picking up a bit of dirt. It all influences the way that the car then performs after that. And you know, after it never feels quite right after you put it into a wall and repaired it either. You know, all those little factors are involved all the time, and I think that, yeah, it becomes a bit of a juggling game. And as soon as you drop one ball, the other 2 balls are still in the air whilst you're trying to pick up the one, and it's very easy to drop one of the others whilst getting the other up. So it's one of those situations here where drivers have to really dig deep after a mistake's been made to then get that focus and concentration dialed in again, so that they can attempt to finish out the rest of the race. But with 3 minutes left to go, there's not too much action happening out on the track. I mean, Grayling and Piens, I think, will fight it out to that last minute of this 3 minutes. But for the rest of the order, it's relatively close. Claessens and Junior McCall, once again, 3rd and 4th place. They've kind of settled in there for a long time. Junior McCall not looking like he's quite close enough to be giving the pressure onto Claessens that would really put Claessens in a compromised position. But I think that in 10th and 11th, you know, Grayling and Piens, I think these 2 are definitely in that situation, Ryan.
Yeah, Piens is putting so much pressure onto Grayling, but of course he's got to get the move done and he's got to make it stick. He can't have what happened last time occur again. You know, can't get past and then of course make a mistake. The BMW comes straight back past you and you're in the exact same situation you were before. You know, you've got to make the pass stick. You've got to look confident. Of course, Grayling will know this, won't he? He'll know that Piens made the pass, and then he made a mistake. So he knows that Piens' confidence won't be at its highest, and as soon as Piens goes for a move, if he can get past Grayling, Grayling knows he has to bounce back immediately. He has to fight back, take the position back. And, you know, it's all about the mentality, and like you said, it is rhythm-based, and there's nothing worse than staying behind someone for 20 minutes of a race. You get past them, and then you give the position back. There's nothing more frustrating, you know, when you're battling, especially towards the end of a race. But you've been following someone 20 minutes, waiting to get past. You get that one opportunity, and then you throw it away.
Oh,
so frustrating.
This camera angle just gives us some insights into how Grayling is throwing it through Ascari. I mean, those little dip curbs are unsettling the rear end of that BM, not giving him the exit down the straights here. And this is what just keeps allowing Piens just keep throwing and throwing. Will he get the cut back through here? It looks like he might do so. A minute left to go. They're going to go side by side on the exit to Parabolic Ride, and they're going to drag it out down the start finish straight. This is what I signed up for in the GT4s.
Look at the power of that BMW, though, out of the corner. So much pace in that car, so much torque coming out of the corners. But of course, this is where it starts to struggle a bit now in the way. Its top end not as good, it seems, as the Cayman, and they're going to come into the first chicane, and there's going to be contact. And that's going to be Grayling going around. Piens is going to be through. Cornet Strauss, though, is going to take the opportunity to get past the likes of Grayling. He'll say thank you very much for that.
So, Ryan, I thought this was going to come, right? I thought, you know, are they going to go ultra defensive? The BMW comes across in... Let's go back to a replay here. I mean, you're not going to allow anyone to come through. It looks like they are, you know, semi... Not quite alongside, but, yeah, I mean, BM did come quite across the line to try and apex the corner. Wasn't always going to be space for both of them coming through. And I mean, I don't know. Tell me,
I don't
what
know.
do you think?
I don't know. It's a bit hard to judge. I think from from Pientz's perspective, I understand why he went for it. You know, the gap was there, and it was there. He had almost half a car length,
Yeah.
you know, alongside. But I think as well, if you take the BMW out of the equation, Pienz isn't making the corner. He doesn't have the correct line to make the apex of that corner. He's just going to go straight on through the runoff. So,
I got
in
you.
that scenario,
Double
he should have
considerations
backed
to
out.
come through. I got you.
Yeah, it's hard to call. It's hard to call. Pienz has benefited from it.
Post-race stewarding inquiry
Yeah.
for sure, but like you said, Pienz has driven on through it, and the stewards will have to rule on that. But I'm going to switch us back over to our race leader on his final lap. As it stands, I don't believe there are too many close battles still out on track. If you do see one, please just let me know as we go round. But Jordan Sherritt going to come out through Ascari now, a little bit drifty, a little bit fun, as he comes round to lead on the final lap. And what I would say has been quite a dominant race so far for him.
And yeah, I mean, you mentioned this guy, one of the coaches for the Raceface Speed Labs. What better way to advertise your services than to take a dominant win at Monza in the wet? Jordan Sherritt, the 137 Mercedes GT4, will win here at Monza confidently. Massive margin between him and the rest of the podium finishers. And it looks like it's going to be Morgan McCall in the 888 Mercedes. It's going to be 2 Mercedes on the podium at Monza in a 1-2. Where have we heard that before?
Oh, absolutely everywhere, really, if you're an F1 fan. And Morgan McCall through the Parabolica with, plenty of time for the fireworks to go off after Jordan crossed the line. But a solid second place for Morgan, and just the points that he needed. We wondered how he would take this race, and I think he handled it like an absolute champion. Third place for Quade Claessens from ATK as well as Junior McCall from ATK. So ATK second, third, fourth, and Cody Sherritt will have a respectable fifth place finish ahead of Ryan Ottens down to the line. I mean, it looked like right down to the line, really. Cody Sherritt gets ahead of Ottens just before the line. Adrian De Beer here will cross the line in seventh place, ducking and diving and weaving across the line as Richard van Kalle comes home in eighth place. Ninth place for Monet Deploy in the bullet liveried AMG. The top 10 then will be hauled out by Cornet Strauss. So he does manage to overcome all the adversity that was sort of there, manages to get himself back up into the top 10. It will be 11th place for Grayling and 12th place then for Piens and 13th for Schutter as one of our drivers has left the lobby. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see coming into the final round next week what comes to play, and I'm excited really for the final round of the season and to see if we're going to crown Morgan as the championship or not. And we go out to Spa as the final round, so I mean, you couldn't go to a better racetrack really, other than Spa, right?
Spa's going to be good. It's going to be very good. We had a great race there for the RCI GT4 Championship, and people are probably fed up of me referencing that championship, but it's all I've got to go off, really. And I mean, to be fair, all those races were absolutely phenomenal. We actually have a bit of an insight there in the text chat post race. We saw Charles Wilkins said throttle pedal gone, so turns out it was a throttle issue.
Yeah, you weren't
for Charles Wilkins.
You weren't wrong in calling that. We seem to think it had been some kind of a hardware failure, and it was exactly just that. So, I mean, a great round coming out here for round 4 or round 5, should I say. I expected there to be more chaos in the rain, and there really wasn't. It was some good racing and good clean starts. Of course, the grid not as full as we would have liked it to be. Unfortunately, things outside of our control lead to that. So I really do apologize to all our drivers that weren't able to make it out tonight. Of course, massive thanks once again goes out to the likes of Resource Complete and Black Ribbon Sim, for just sponsoring up with Raceface and partnering up, making things as possible as they are this evening. So guys, we'll see you next week at Spa for the last of the GT4 rounds. I'll see you again tomorrow night for the same track here, same conditions, Monza in the wet, for the GT3 Pro season or round 5. So we run the same rounds in GT4s and GT3s, so it makes it nice and easy for the drivers to practice. But yeah, it's going to be wet conditions. Ryan, have you had a good time here tonight?
George, I've been commentating alongside you. There's no such thing as a bad night. No, it's been it's been great, and the GT4s, like you said, we didn't have the numbers today, and it's a shame for all the drivers out there, but we do still, we do still appreciate, all the people showing up to the stream, especially, a lot of you guys showing up, taking time out your evening to watch some entertaining racing. I think we did have some entertaining racing as well here tonight. There's some good moves.
It was definitely not short of entertaining. So thanks again, Ryan, for joining me. I hope that I'll have you back with me next week for Spa, as we get to close out the grand final and crown our first GT4 champion for Raceface. It's the first season, so I can't believe how quickly this season has gone. So we'll see you guys next week for Spa for the GT4s. I'll see you guys tomorrow for the GT3s. Thanks again, everybody, for joining, and we appreciate all the love and support.